What's older than we think? The first carbonated drink to be sold to the public was invented by Swiss watchmaker and amateur scientist J. Schwepp in 1783, who sold his delicious sparkling water to thirsty customers in Geneva. In just 7 years, he was doing business so fast that he moved the factory to London and introduced a new flavor, sparkling lemon, to stand out from competitors who were trying to imitate his drink. The aux connector that we still use for headphones and speakers was invented in 1877. There have been improvements since, but the basics of it are pretty much the same. Beer is thought to be older than bread. It's much easier to fill a jar with wheat and water, let it ferment, and brew beer than it is to grind grain, mix it, and bake it. So you're telling me sliced bread is the greatest thing since beer? Huh. Sharks. As a species they are older than the rings of Saturn. Wristwatches. Queen Elizabeth I got one in 1571. Just going to drop this here. We had alarm clocks that rode themselves down a table and shot off mini cannons in the 1500s. National Geographic was founded in 1888, same year as Foster's and Jack the Ripper. I was really surprised to discover when Oxford University was founded. They don't know the year for sure, but they know there was definitely teaching going on there in 1096. Another commenter above said that Oxford isn't even the oldest university, but it's the most well known. Al-Qur'an University in Morocco is the oldest university, founded by Fatima al-Fihri in 859. The fact that the lighter is older than the match shook my head as a kid. It also gave me the curiosity to question things that seems obvious. When you think about it, it makes sense. The lighter is a simple mechanical concept, some flammable gas and a spark. The match, on the other hand, is a complex chemical reaction. Matches are just way more complex than I thought as a kid. They aren't just a stick of wood. The electric car. What is likely the first human carrying electric vehicle with its own power source was tested along a Paris street in April 1881 by French inventor Gustave Trouvé. The first crude electric car was built in the 1830s, but it was essentially a semi-functioning model. The electric car was a direct competitor to gasoline-powered vehicles until the 1920s when roads got better. People started driving further than the range of an electric car, and the world started finding major oil reserves. Weren't the first electric cars using lead-acid batteries? If so, when the batteries eventually discharged, did people go somewhere to replace their battery with a new one? Lead-acid, like car batteries, are rechargeable. Escalators have been around since 1859, though they were called rotating stairs. Yet the US state of Wyoming still only has 2 of them. Granted, it's not like Wyoming has enough people to really need any more. Cruise control, power windows and automatic headlights. I saw all 3 on a 1955 Cadillac. Oh, and the radio on it had a seek function. Fax machines. They were invented in 1843, before the telephone. https www.thoughtco.com History of the fax machine 1,991,379. Came for this one. To put this in perspective, tumbleweeds aren't native to the American Southwest, but by a quirk of history we know exactly which shipment of flax from Ukraine brought their seeds to the US. In 1877, commercial fax service has been around longer than tumbleweeds in the American Southwest. A samurai could have used a fax machine. The Japanese do love a good fax. No, I'm serious. As far as I can tell, this is the Japanese business practice for sending an important document. Man types up document and prints it, walks it over to boss. Boss hand corrects it and makes notes. Faxes it back despite being on same floor. Changes are made. Document is printed again and faxed to mail room. Document is then faxed to business they are communicating with in the US. Fax is delivered as a PNG to my email. Tilted 90 degrees and barely readable. I'm imagining a samurai in his armor with a katana sitting at a desk in an office sending attacks. Sharks. Sharks as a family are older than trees. The oldest evidence puts sharks in an era where the only multicellular plant was algae. I knew they were old, but damn not that old. I looked it up, and fossils are said to be around 450 million YO. My contribution to this thread was ferns. 359 million YO, but sharks are another 100 mil before that. Mind blown. Fun fact about evolution. There was a time when trees existed before there were microbes to decompose them. The trees were made of lignin and cellulose, and the microbes that could eat them took some time to evolve. These trees grew 150 plus feet tall and had shallow roots, so they fell over quite easily. The trees would fall down to the forest floor and just sit there. They wouldn't decompose. So you'd have forests that were hundreds of feet deep of just fallen over trees. The ancient Romans, well, the wealthy ones, had central heating in their homes. You can actually still see the pipes in some of the buildings at Herculaneum. What I think is really cool from Herculaneum is that we're able to recover writing from the libraries there. The pyroclastic floated and turned the papyrus to ash. It preserved in a very damaged state, but thanks to lasers we can see the words that were once visible on the pages. Thanks to lasers. Thanks, lasers. On top of that, if you ever get the chance to see how Roman homes were designed, window placement, ceilings, etc., to naturally cool themselves, it's nothing short of incredible. Do you have any good book suggestions on the subject? It's a subject I've been meaning to learn about. Also hot tubs, pleasure piers, fish ponds, water towers and fountains, elevators, all sorts of crazy amenities, at least in the homes of the super rich, and tower blocks. Roman insular tenements were huge. Flushing toilets date all the way back to the Indus River Valley civilization. Back in 2000 BC, ancient Minoans, 3000-1100 BCE, had hot and cold running water and an extensive sewage system. Romans had pipe-heated floors, something I still thought was awesome when my aunt got it like a decade ago. Indus River Valley civilization. Norte Chico. Oreos. I was shocked to learn that Oreos predate chocolate chip cookies, sliced bread, and my 100-year-old great-grandmother. You're going to make me Google the year, aren't you? 1912 for those wondering. And before Oreos, there was Hyde Rocks. And before Hyde Rocks, there was the Dark Times. The sentiment that modern society is degenerate and that the youth are to blame is, one of the oldest things we have written down, that I can remember off the top of my head. Cato the Elder complained that the younger generations were becoming too Greek, and Socrates used to complain that the younger generations were ruining their brains by writing instead of memorizing information. There are far more older examples, but those are the oldest I remember. Maybe Socrates was onto something. Socrates, my head hurts. It's because you always on that damn scroll. Brain surgery in 1997. Archaeologists discovered an ancient tomb in the French village of Ensishim from 5000 BC, which contained the decomposing body of a 50-year-old man with holes in his skull. After a thorough examination, it was determined that the holes, located near the frontal lobe, were caused by a type of surgery, not by forced trauma, and the operation appears to have been successful because the wounds healed before the patient's death. To this day, however, researchers cannot say for sure what exactly the surgery was trying to fix. This might have been trepanation, the deliberate practice of drilling a hole into the skull for medical reasons, for example, headaches, epilepsy, head trauma, mental disorders, letting out evil spirits, etc. The oldest evidence of trepanning comes from the Neolithic period 12,000 years ago. It was crazy common to quote Salmonella, you had a larger chance of having a hole in your skull as a caveman than being a redhead as an American. To this day, however, researchers cannot say for sure what exactly the surgery was trying to fix. Bet the guy had it done because he had ancient baby shark stuck in his head too long. The name Tiffany, it dates back to the 12th century and has actually led to a thing in writing called the Tiffany problem. Because you can have a well-researched historical novel that people just don't buy into, because you named your 12th century peasant Tiffany, it just sounds laughably anachronistic. The Tiffany problem makes me think of Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice and the name Jessica. He wanted the love interest, who was Jewish, to have a super exotic name, so he invented the name Jessica. The name has become so common since then that it's totally lost its effect. Shakespeare also randomly invented the word gossip because he needed to define a bunch of wives in the town talking shit and spreading rumors. And now it's part of common English language. Tiffany, it's Greek. To is the root. Wait, Tiffany is just feminine theophanes? Hilarious is the root. Ah, yes, I can tell. Similarly, The name Chad. There was at least one saint named Chad, but despite knowing this, I always used to giggle passing St. Chad's Anglican Church in Toronto, the Virgin Mary vs the St. Chad. Astronomer here. The star HD 140,283, also nicknamed the Methuselah star, is about 200 light years away from us and looks nondescript. However, if we take its composition and compare it to our standard models of stellar evolution for other, better studied stars, the star's age pops out as 14.460.8 billion years old. Let me remind you, the universe is thought to be about 13.8 billion years old. And we don't think we got the first stars until maybe 200 million years after that. Obviously, we do not think the Methuselah star is literally older than the universe when it is more likely that we just don't understand stellar evolution for stars like it super well. However, it is exciting because it is undoubtedly a very old star, and currently we do not have any observations of what the first stars were like in the universe, called population II stars. It's thought they were larger than stars are today because there were no metals from stellar fusion to contaminate the hydrogen gas, and they'd thus only live a few million years tops. As such, it's very interesting to have a very old star relatively next door to us in the Milky Way. It will be really interesting in coming years if other very early stars are finally observed to figure out how old they are, and how they compare to this one. Paul Rudd, 51? What the hell? That's just his mainland age. Over here, Kunu has no age. Nintendo. This company was actually created in 1889. Nintendo was founded in 1889. Van Gogh painted Starry Night in 1889. Adolf Hitler was born in 1889. Hitler made the worst video games. That's why nobody likes him now. Beer. It's one of the oldest prepared drinks in the world. It not only predates every civilization but actually contributed to their creation. It's a tale as old as time. Getting effing wasted to forget your problems. Tale as old as time. Bees as old as wine. Beauty of the East. The year 1990. We are as close to it as we are the year 2050. I was born in 1990 and I hate this. I don't know if this counts, but dinosaurs lived on the earth a lot longer than most people think. When you think of dinosaurs, you think of their extinction, but they roamed the earth for 165 million years. Compare that to our 6 million and it's almost mind-boggling, at least to know. What's even crazier to me is that for most people in their minds there was dinosaurs, extinction, cavemen, us, like we popped out of the ash of the dinos, but in reality there were about 58 million years between the dinosaurs dying and the first Homo sapiens appearing, where the world was covered in mostly now extinct megafauna. Sure, dinosaurs are cool and all, but why does nobody talk about giant North American ground sloths, cave bears, and lions? There's literally tens of millions of years of interesting non-dinosaur species that most people seem to just not even know existed. Also, dinosaurs like the Stegosaurus were as far apart in time from the T-Rex as the T-Rex is from our time. It's even better than that. We're about 16 million years closer to the last Tyrannosaurus than the first Tyrannosaurus was to the last Stegosaurus. Trees. There are a lot of trees that are way older than you would expect. The oldest tree recorded on this planet is Methuselah, which is about 4k years old, but I'm pretty sure there are older ones out there that we aren't aware of. Social media. Wealthy ancient Romans had a system where they used slaves as scribes and messengers in order to share gossip and art, poetry and news updates with friends in their social circle. Augustus. Call slave. I want to share this joke with Poniatus. Prefect Tiberius. You have been tagged in the public forum in a mosaic of the drunken revelries on the Lupercal. Stonehenge. It predates the oldest pyramid in Egypt by nearly 300 years. Always the first wonder in Civ. It would be nice if the RE would let me grab it for once, but nope. I've even had a game where Shaka, from the effing Zulus, built it before me. Netflix. I feel like it is only a few years old, but it was invented in 1997. I remember getting DVDs by mail from Netflix. Google, Reddit, YouTube. It's hard to imagine that they already have been around for 15 years, with Google actually being around 20 years old. Our entire generation has now grown up that cannot remember that it wasn't always there. Ancient Egyptians who built the pyramids. The ancient Egyptians were as old to the ancient Romans as the ancient Romans are to us. Cleopatra is chronologically closer to us than she is to when the pyramids were built. Woolly mammoths were still alive during the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza. They died out about a millennium after its completion. Contact lenses. Leonardo da Vinci had the idea of contact lenses in 1508 and the first successful contact lenses were made in 1888. In so many fields, he was way ahead of his time. The guy truly was a visionary. He literally invented a diving suit and a paraglider long before they were actually invented. Scientists even tested whether his designs worked as intended and they did. It's insane how far ahead of his time he was. The use of concrete. Its use goes as far back as the Mayans, but more notably in Egyptian construction as well as in Rome. The Romans had an arguably greater concrete mix than we currently have, but that was never passed down. Eventually the use of concrete fell out of popularity for centuries as we seemingly lost the information needed to create it, as if the recipe was thrown out and nobody wrote it down. Also Samuel L. Jackson. The man is 71 years old, but looks like he hasn't aged in decades. Oxford University. It's older than the Aztec Empire. I think this one is actually a reverse of the question. The Aztec Empire is much more recent than most people think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the surprise in this fact comes from the confusion between Aztecs and Mayans. If you didn't know the time period, you could understand the confusion. The food at the back of your cupboard. I have a bottle of Worcestershire sauce that expired the 28th of April 2009 in my fridge. That means that bottle, A, made the trip from NJ to Florida with me in 2010. B, is the lone survivor from my bachelor pad fridge from 2012 to 2014. C, made it into my fridge when my wife and I bought a house in 2014. It's been sitting there ever since. You moved from NJ to Florida and brought along a bottle of Worcestershire sauce that was already expired, and have kept it for another 10 years through yet another move. I hope you're that dedicated to your wife.